You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified relationship coach. If you haven't lately, go to wedeepen.com, check out all the upcoming social and transformational experiences that we have curated to support you in having a healthy, meaningful, loving relationship. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate it, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to host it. And while I love connecting with you in this way through this podcast, what I enjoy even more is supporting you in real life, whether you come and join the Love Club. The Love Club is a 6-month intimacy accelerator for those who are currently single. We include peer-to-peer matchmaking. So if you're over the dating apps, or maybe you tried the higher matchmaker in the past before and that didn't work, the Love Club is a space for you to relationship in community. It includes peer-to-peer matchmaking, comprehensive relationship education, and accountability to your love goals. When you go to wedeepen.com, click on that link that says the Love Club, apply to join. To note, we will be opening up enrollment. Right now, you can go and apply. I'll let you know soon. It's going to happen soon, I promise. That you will be able to join in this cohort. We have the first group that are about 2.5 months into their 6-month journey, and it has been fucking amazing. I've learned so much. I'm growing in the program. The people are going in the program are sharing the dating stories. We do master classes and small group masterminds, and every Friday I'm available on Zoom for 2 hours, and the whole cohort comes in and they're sharing about their relational experiences, and we're sending links and concepts and compatibility tests, which we're gonna talk a little bit about some typology today, a really special typology that I've been hearing about for years now. And about, I guess 2 weeks ago or so, I was at a mastermind retreat. It was a private mastermind retreat in Calabasas, California. And I met Larry Michel there. And when Larry told me about genetic energetics and the 4 answers, sparks went off in my mind. I was like, I've been hearing about you for quite some time. I knew we were going to meet at some point. Him and I ended up geeking out until the wee hours of the morning, talking about compatibility, how to better understand yourself and how you relate to others. So that's our conversation for today. But again, Love Club, join us there and check out those experiences to be with us in real life. Also, if you enjoy this podcast, share it with a friend. Let's spread the love. Get more people into the network. And my intention is to shine a light on the relationship industry. And you might not even know it exists, but there are so many people out there. When I say people, modalities, concepts that can help you have an epic love life. That's learn communication skills, conflict resolution, understanding your hormones, how to attract the right partner, how to be in relationship and keep the relationship alive. Also erotic wellness, because let's face it, most of us didn't grow up observing healthy relationships. There's a lack of relationship role models, and the topic is nearly completely neglected in our educational curriculum. Okay, so let's get in it today. Larry, welcome to Deepen with Christina. It's so great to be having a conversation with you now that I get to share it with others.
Thank you. It's really fun to be here. It's really, really fun to be here. I'm excited to do this. I would have done this whether you had 10 million viewers or 2, only because when we met, you are a sponge. You are definitely a sponge. And I mean that in a very complimentary way, because you know so much It's not like you're a sponge and don't know anything. You have a lot of information and a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and still you're a sponge. You're
Mm.
still curious and you're still open to look at things and see them differently than you thought or even want them to be. And that's a special attribute. And so I'm excited to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that reflection. I look at my role as the role model. I know you're familiar with the human design system as well. My profile is a 6-2, which is a role model hermit. And so, yeah, I'll go study all the concepts and I'll, gather all the information. But my role is to then digest it and be a living example of it. I've seen that that's what's happened over the past decade of studying relationships. It's that if you come into the Love Club, it's not me every master class teaching you what I know. It's essentially being like, learn from this person, learn from this person. I'm gathering all the information. I keep gathering all the information and then I'll spit it back out to you and I'll digest it and keep going. And so sometimes it's a vulnerable position to be because a lot of eyes can be on you like, what's she going to do next? But I'm playing that role.
Jumping. You keep people in a place of inquiry, and that's the most valuable place for any of us to be.
Mm.
And by inquiry or curiosity, I mean, that's when we're looking to discover things, not looking to prove something, not asking questions so we get the answers we want or the answers we desire, but asking questions because we're open to the surprise of the answer. And that inquiry space, that really, if all humanity was in that space, we wouldn't have wars. We wouldn't have the kind of challenges we have. Humanity would be in a far more conscious, far higher vibrational place. We'll get there. That's the goal.
We're going to get there. I am excited to dive into genetic energetics, but on that same line, before I do, I'm going to be really spicy for a moment. With what you said, it's so true of the expansion of thought that can happen when you're in curiosity, or even the expansion of movement. About a year ago, I was told about like someone had mentioned pegging for the first time to me. And I was like,
what's that?
Is
that a board game? What is that?
I am never doing that. Never pegging anyone. And then fast forward, I said this in January of 2023. 4 months later, I was in a connection that I was feeling safe and secure. And this person had experience with that. And I was like, you know what? I want to try that. Like, I'm open to it. So it's so interesting how, even if you're listening, hosting a podcast can be really vulnerable because you don't want necessarily anyone to lock you in a thought or a specific moment in time because we're ever changing beings. And so I might say, I'll never do that, or I won't participate that. And then, months later, years later, you're like, maybe so.
Yeah, that's where labeling is very problematic as well. Super problematic. It has its value, but it does more destruction than it does help most of the time.
And when you say labeling, what do you mean?
Well, I have a typology, right? And this typology has a variety of names that have been given to certain circumstances and behaviors. So and I'll tell you, when we train our practitioners and they come in for their training, at the very beginning, I'll say, this is one of the most profound systems you'll ever have to work with, and I don't want you to use it. And they kind of go, what? What am I paying for? And then I'd said, plan, pause, right? And I say, I don't want you to use it to project on a person how they're going to behave, to project on a partnership about its success. It's kind of like saying, oh, you're an Aries and you're a Gemini. That'll never work. It's bullshit. It's just not true. There are so many things that make up our engagement with another person. So all these different profiling systems, whether it's human design or gene keys or enneagrams or Vedic astrology or Western astrology or Aboutly, or you just go down all the different assessments, Myers-Briggs, Berkman, I geek out on these because it's kind of where my original education was. all of them, almost all of them, but let's just say all of them, we'll just generalize, have great information to share. But if you run one of these profiles and then determine someone's going to behave a certain way as a result of that profile, you have done a huge disservice to a person, because you've taken away their ability to be flexible and to change in a circumstance and encounter one person differently than another. And we all know that, look, we meet one person, we have a certain relationship with them, we meet someone else and it's different, right? They could be twins. Why isn't it the same? They could have been raised the same way. Why isn't it the same? They're all projectors. Why aren't they all the same? They're just not. And so we have to be able to take this information we get and use it to help us understand the circumstances when they happen and not project what's going to happen before it does.
So true. Yes. If you were to describe to our listeners, what is genetic energetics?
Well, what I say? Okay. Genetic energetics is literally the oldest system, the oldest methodology that humans have used to determine who they want to be with and how they want to engage with them. It goes back to the beginning of humankind. And the fortunate thing is, almost 43 years ago now, there was a brilliant man who helped take this information and put words and science behind it so that we could apply it, so that we could identify it, so that we could call it out when we experienced it. Most important, so we could embrace our differences and honor our similarities. Actually, embrace and honor all of them. Most people, if you're not like me, I don't like you. Right. Well, I'll tolerate you. You might be cool. Let's see what value you bring to the table. But, you don't talk to me the way I talk to me, the way I understand me, the way I do my life, the way I speak, the way I engage sexually, the way I do money, all of those different things. You're different. Right. So, let's kind of see where we can value our differences. But I pick me over you. Right. And this might sound very selfish, but look at who and what we are makes a difference. You didn't pick your blood type. You didn't pick your blood type, but you have a blood type. Is that blood type important? Well, yeah, if you go to have surgery and you're getting a transfusion, you need to have that. You need to know what that blood type is. Otherwise, you don't need it so much, right? So, and when it comes to relationships, guess what? Most of us are doing relationship surgery all the time without knowing our blood type. Genetic energetics is providing that blood type. And so it's a system that identifies the energetic frequencies that you vibrate at that are genetically coded. You have them, they don't change. They're the same way through your entire life. It's when we talk about energy here, it's not, there's lots of different ways that people talk about energy. People talk about how energy grows, it shifts, it moves from one thing to another. You never get rid of it, but it's energy is always kind of mobile and shifting and changing. In this case, when we talk about energy, we're talking about it like it's your blood type. You have a vibration. It's specific to your genetic coding. And it determines how you communicate, determines how you think, how you process information, how you relate to money, how you sexually engage, who you're going to have chemistry with. Whether, you're on task with things and can't be interrupted, or whether you're highly psychic, all of these attributes and these characteristics come forward really quickly. And it's not to say that one's any better than the other. It's to say, this is what you are, and let's see how it shows up in your life. And if it's showing up in a way that you have somehow dissed yourself or made yourself seem like a bad person, or you weren't good at sex, or you don't communicate well, or you don't listen well, which a lot of people get because shame and blame is just exhaustingly too prevalent in our culture. So we walk around with all these crazy stories that are founded on trying to figure out a scenario that we don't fully understand. And here comes genetic energetics and say, well, that's simple. This is probably what it is. And when people feel into it, they go, oh, that's exactly what it is. I get it. So I was okay. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't bad, right? I wasn't less than. I'm actually quite perfect the way I am. And yes, are there areas that we grow and we can learn and we can interact with each other better? Of course, we're always learning those things. That's where the curiosity thing comes in, right? Inquiry is critical. But to be able to feel into it and go, oh man, I feel like I'm home. Not home in a place, home inside my body. I know me. I recognize me. And in fact, I'm recognizing things that I have set aside because I was made wrong for them. And now you have someone that can show up so fully as themselves. Talk about the dating world. When you meet someone that really knows themselves well, they're in the flow. They know how they flow. They know how their body works. They know how their mind works. They know how they like to communicate. And they, they kind of admire themselves, right? They love themselves. When you meet those people, those are the most attractive people out there. They're not looking to change you because they're quite fine with themselves, right? And in that process of discovering who they are, they've also been able to allow other people to be who they and what they are. So genetic energetics, by the way, is what you are. It's not the who. The who part is conditioning. That's how, when we grow up, it's our traumas, it's our belief systems, it's our religion, it's how our parents raised us, it's our experiences, it's the relationships that worked or didn't work, it's our kids and how we want to do things, it's our vision, our purpose, our missions. That's who. But the what we are is what genetic energetics is. It's a what.
So when somebody wants to, somebody listening, they're like, this is really interesting. I want to discover myself more deeply through this system. Now it's genetic energetics. After we met, when I brought this back to the Love Club, we have our open office hours, of course, I was like, you guys, let's all pull our profiles. And, I wanted to learn about them through the lens of genetic energetics. And I wanted them to be able to learn about themselves through this program too. And I'm also coming at it from a healthy lens of skepticalism because I'm like, this is new. What is this? Is it real?
I totally understand the skeptical part for
so
sure.
You say it's genetic. When they asked about how is it genetic, I was like, well, you're putting in your birth date and then your opposite gender parents' birth date. Mm-hmm. So it seems astrological, but
it does, doesn't it?
Said it's not astrological. This is quantum physics.
We have to understand. Let's have provide a little clarity around the esoteric sciences. Okay, right. So people call human design and gene keys astrological as well, right? Because it asks for time, birthplace, and date, all that stuff. A lot of people consider numerology, Vedic astrology, Western astrology, even enneagrams astrological. They're different. The core in all of them is the same. It's astronomy. Astronomy is a hard science. Tides, the moons, the impact of the planets on this planet, seasons, all those things. It's a very hard science. Farmer's Almanac's been around for years. It's accurate because it's astronomy. It's not astrology, right? So we're using astronomy, and that's why we're picked birth dates. But the other ingredient that's unique to genetic energetics is quantum physics. So we're into the quantum world with our information, but we're using astronomy to pull the dates. And the most miraculous thing that happened is the gentleman who originally created this, Dick Nelson, he passed away in 2003. I never got a chance to meet him. I actually was introduced to the company 2 years later. He built this thing. He designed it. He came upon it because he had gone through 3 divorces. And he was a scientist and an efficiency expert. And he's going, I'm a smart guy. How can I make 3 horrendous mistakes? I've married this woman and I thought it was going to work. I was certain. I thought I was smart and good at relationships and I still fucked up. Right. So he's going, there's got to be something else going on here. And he had experience in esoteric sciences. He liked them, but he also knew that that didn't give him the answer either. Astrology didn't give him the answer he wanted. Numerology didn't give him the answers he wanted. Gene keys and human design weren't even really around or prevalent. You could hardly find or get any information about them. I don't think gene keys was around at all, 43 years ago. Enneagrams were, but even still, he was going, there's something else here. And he had looked, it's kind of fun because I wish I had met him, because he had looked at all these other kinds of profiling systems. In my career, I have worked on and looked at and evaluated and assisted with the creation of all kinds of profiles. So looking at something like Persogenics or DISC or Myers-Briggs and those things, those were like character assessments. How are you going to figure out what someone is that they were created to help people in business and hopefully in their home life, right? But he looked at those and said, that's not helping me pick my best mate either. So he just, I don't know how he put it together, but he did it all manually. So this is like before computers. If anybody, that's like BC, right? Before computers. Who knows what that was like? But he did, because he did this all manually and computed this over what became 550,000 plus lines of code, and came up with a system that was so bloody accurate, it was mind-boggling. So when I got involved, which was a couple of years after he had passed away, his partner was looking for someone to help market it. I was at a marketing event and I was there for 3 days. And by the way, I was going through a really horrible relationship breakup at the time. So I didn't even want to talk to anybody. I literally didn't. I was like, just kept to myself. I was there because a friend of mine was presenting. I found this aisle. There was a main aisle in the center, but I found this row where I could go all the way to the end because there was a wall there, and I knew the wall wouldn't talk to me, right? And the person next to me, thank God, they didn't really want to. They were listening. They didn't need to engage with me very often, so I had my privacy. And I listened, and on the third day, this guy gets up, and he happened to be at the end of my row. I mean, I had to walk behind him for 3 days, never even noticed him. That's how it tells you where my head was at. It's like that situation when a relationship's going bad, when all we are is in the depths of it, right? It's the dark night of the soul. Anyhow, that said, the last day, this man gets up, and they had an opportunity to present, and he talks about his business, and he said, I can tell you something about your relationship that no one else has been able to tell you. And now I perk up, because for a year I've been reading books. We've gone to therapists. We've been to coaches. I went to tantric practitioner training. I just did all kinds of things to figure out how to fix the relationship. No one listening here has ever tried to fix a relationship before, right? If you say you haven't, you're lying. Anyhow, he gets up and he says that, and my head goes, okay. So after the seminar's over, I go meet with him in the lobby, and pulls out this big book. And he asks me for birth dates. He goes, when's your birth date? When's your mom's birth date? When's the lady's birth date? When's her father's birth date? And I'm going, what? This is kind of like, you've heard this. You've already experienced this with your group. It's like, what is this, astrology? I like astrology. It's cool, but it hasn't been my answer for my relationship issue or issues. And I've been impacted by it, but no, it's not the whole picture. And he goes, just humor me, get me the information. And there's a really funny story behind that, but we don't have time for that this time, maybe another time. And I get the information, and he looks at it in his book, and he starts to tell me things about the relationship, and everything he tells me is like dead on accurate. I'm going, whoa, okay. So have you been stalking me? How do you know all this information, right? And I was impressed. But what was even more powerful is what he told me about myself in terms of some of the character assessment pieces of this typology that literally pulled me from a place of shame and blame and even guilt that I've held on to for decades, and ended it instantly. Like instantly. And I don't know if anybody's had this experience where you thought you did something wrong and you felt it so thoroughly, like, oh my God, I have done the worst thing. And then you start to victimize yourself, and then it just gets worse and worse. And then someone comes up and goes, did you know that that was really yellow and not red? And you go, oh, and all of a sudden you're free from the guilt or the shame or blame. We've all had those experiences, whether they're small or large. Mine happened to be 30 years of beliefs that I've been carrying around. And so Christina, I was interested. And he knew that what I'd been doing successfully was taking products to market at that point in time. And he said, will you help me? And I went, well, I'm interested. I would love to help you. And I can't help you market this unless I know it's for real, for real. It has to be efficacious. Efficacious meaning it can't ever be wrong. Like, I wouldn't sell a vibrator if it didn't work. If you put batteries in it when it was supposed to take batteries and it didn't work, or it's supposed to charge and it never charged, I would not sell that product. So I said, I'm happy to check this out. I'm interested. I'm fascinated. I'm actually very interested and very curious, kind of like you were the night we met and we talked. We talked for hours, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, look, I'll let you research it. What do you need to do? And I said, I need to interview people. I need to have an experience of how people experience this information. And I need to know that it's accurate. He said, okay. And he hired me. And I spent the next 2 years interviewing couples, over 1,000 couples. And it was never wrong, not once. And so, in that period of time, I went, okay, there's something here. And I've got to be much more interested because it turned out to be very, very accurate. But there was something else that also happened that was kind of outside of their plan. So this, at the time, it was called Match Matrix. It was designed to be a matchmaking product. And all they wanted to do was sell it to the matchmaking sites. We didn't want to have our own site. We wanted them to do an Intel inside, put our product inside and use it for matching their clients. And when I saw how accurate it was and all the kind of indoctrination I got from this thing about the value of finding people that were very similar, I went, okay, let's do it. Let's try to sell it to the matchmaking companies. And we had a learning experience there, because we discovered the matchmaking companies really did not want to match people up. They couldn't afford to, actually. So if you were, pick your site, chemistry, match, you name it, whoever the most.
OkCupid, eHarmony.
Yeah. Well, OkCupid was free, so they were a little bit different. They had done some of their own research with their assessments, but it was internal research. It wasn't external. It wasn't like research that was done by other people. So it had a bias.
Well, to pause real quick, with OkCupid, because part of their niche was to gauge compatibility. They had developed so many questions. You would go in there and you would spend hours answering
forever.
Yeah. And what they have come to the conclusion is that there's no compatibility questions that can prove or provide great evidence that two people are the right match for each other. Like data scientists have said, this is not possible. You essentially have to get people into a room. And I want to dive into what people will discover through the data when they do pull their reports, because I'm curious, and we were there that night and geeking out. Of course, I want to know if me and my significant other are quote unquote compatible based upon this system. And when I pulled our reports, we have a lot in common. But I think the main thing that you judge compatibility on, we're not compatible in. So if we were to run through the lens of this as a matchmaking system, you probably from the start would tell us we're not together. We might not even entered it. So what do you say about that?
So it's a super, super good question, and it's a pertinent one to relationships in general. So here I am. I'm in this now. I've gotten involved with the company. I've taken a percentage of it. We're trying to sell it to matchmaking companies, right? Now we know from our research in terms of longevity that when people are more aligned, when they're more similar to each other, that their success ratio is higher. We know that, right? But here's the challenge. We're just looking at, is your relationship successful or not successful? Are things working or not working based on how you've done life up till now, the information you've had up till now, right? And now I'm coming to the table and going and looking at it and going, well, the people that have been most similar to each other have had an easier time. Those relationships have lasted longer. The people that have the same sexual response type, as we call it, they've had a higher success ratio. We know from our own research that there are two different sexual response types. And when the couple have those two types, they're not the same. One has one type, the other has the other type, that over time, 95% of those relationships don't work. And we know that as a statistic, but we also know there's another piece. They don't work if they don't know about the difference. And they don't work if they don't know about the difference. And when they do know about the difference, they know how to accommodate for it. So if they don't have that information, yeah, it doesn't work. So the reality, and this is, I'm going to come back to where I started. In those 2 years, I would interview couples that were together. And sometimes, like I remember one of them, oh my God, it was the hardest thing. So I got their birth date. They just got married. They're friends of mine. They just got married and they're pregnant. And I go to the owner of the company and I give him the birth dates and he gives me their profiles and they're totally different, Christina. And he says, these guys, it's never going to work. This won't last. This is like, it'll last for a little while because they have a baby on the way, but it's going to be a hard relationship. It won't last. And I'm going, and then I have to go back to the couple and tell them the results, right? And I'm not going to go back to them and go, oh, you know what? This report said that you guys aren't going to make it. So you might as well just cut bait right now and just get out of the relationship and decide who's going to have the kid. Why don't you go ahead and do that? I'm not going to do that. That's insane, right? That would be like the worst kind of cruelty. So I brought all of my background in psychology and therapy in, and we looked at their differences and started to discuss how they could accommodate for those differences. Once seeing them and understanding them and having now the ability to appreciate those differences, what would be the impact? And I wasn't looking for the impact, but I was giving them that information because I wasn't going to tell them your relationship is shit. That was cruel. I gave them the truth. Here's your differences. And here's how you identify. Here's how they're identified. And this is what's happening. And when I described that, they went, oh, that's true. Those are true. I said, so here's what you need to do to find out for you guys to really work with each other. You can't go into shame, blame, guilt, resentment, which is the typical thing we do when things don't work the way we want, or someone handles things differently, or someone doesn't listen to us when we want them to, or hears us but doesn't hear what we really say. There's a blame piece, there's a shame piece. So we eliminate that. Here's what happened. About a year into my research, I started to get emails from people that I had worked with, that I went back, that I did the research with. And the emails surprised me because I didn't expect them. And it would come back and say, thank you. You saved our marriage. Thank you. I have not talked to my dad in 30 years. Thank you. My sister and brother and I are happier than we've ever been together. Thank you. You saved my company because my co-partner and I were at odds with each other. Now we know why. We knew how to deal with it. We were ready to walk away from our company, walk away from a multi-million-dollar company, just walk away from it. And instead, we were able to save our relationship, sell the company where we both profited, and go off and do things that we want to do. So there was those kind of things were coming back, and I'm going, oh my God, this is not about matchmaking. Coming back to your comment with OkCupid, no matter all the different assessments they had, they realized that no assessment could guarantee the success of a relationship, right? And there's some accuracy to that.
Yeah.
The key thing here is that what we lack is knowledge, awareness, understanding. This is now coming back to all these other profiling systems. Where does human design help us out? Well, split definition, single definition, triple split, quad split, right? What does that mean and how does that impact a relationship? How might it impact a relationship? A projector, a manifesting generator. What are the differences in how they behave that we may create stories that really just, they mess us up, right? Whereas they're incredible attributes. How do you embrace them? How do you work with them? How do you embrace them in a way that you can turn greatness out of it, right? So when I say any typology and I say don't label people, I mean it. Don't label people, because the information you get is valuable, but not to project. It's valuable to use when you see a circumstance arise and you go, so, by human design, it says this and this. Do you relate to that? Is that what's kind of going on? And they go, well, yeah, that's exactly how I do things. You go, oh, wow. Okay. So for us to get along with each other, because I'm a manifesting generator and this is how I show up, what would we need to do to make this work? Because I love you. I care for you. You're like, there's no other person on this planet I'd rather be with. We have 5 kids with each other. We've been getting together for 10 years, whatever that case might be, or we just met. I want to be with you. Right?
Yeah.
So how do we use this? And that's the bigger picture. It's outside of genetic energetics, but I can tell you, because of the potency of genetic energetics, I have become more emphatic about labeling anything than I ever have. I'll go into love languages or this erotic blueprints. They all have labels. What are we, a shapeshifter, or are we, what is our love language? All of those things, they provide valuable insight to the circumstances and the things that we desire, and those can change.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
They're giving us information.
Yeah, and you put, and you're a good example, right? Months before you met your partner, there was this conversation about pegging. It was like, no, what? No. And then here you are and you meet someone, you have an experience with them, and it is so juicy and so inviting and so opening that your curiosity creates co-creation and serendipity, which turns into bliss, right? You can't do that if you hold on to a label. So stop calling people narcissists. There are clinical narcissists, but stop it. Stop it. Because there are narcissists that, there's elegant narcissism out there. There's people who might be narcissistic with one partner and completely different with another. So what happens when someone calls them a narcissist? It just means that's the experience you had with them. Doesn't mean that's what they are. Stop calling people ADD or ADHD. In genetic energetics, we have part of the profile has to do with what we call activity level. There are people who are super active and there's people who are moderate active. The moderate active people speak at kind of the speed I'm speaking right now, but the super active people talk this fast and they say everything you need to say and they give everything that you want to know as quickly as possible so that this interview only takes 15 minutes instead of an hour, right? And those people that are super active that just heard me just perked up and went, oh my God, why aren't you doing that for the whole interview? Right? So, but guess what? Those people get called ADD and ADHD all the time. And it's a misdiagnostic and it's detrimental to our emotional and our physical health.
Well, you can even see me. I am super active. You're moderate active. And as you were just talking, there's moments I kept being like, like I wanted to.
Oh yeah, people are watching. It's amazing.
Yeah, you can see me. You guys can't see me.
In Zoom rooms,
hear me.
Christina, it's so funny in Zoom rooms. There could be like 30 people or 50 people in a Zoom room, and I'm talking at the speed, and then all of a sudden I start talking at the super active speed, and I do that. I get into that mode because I know how to do it. And you can watch half the people all of a sudden sit up and they start smiling and their bodies shift. And it's so great because I can say to everybody, did you see what just happened in the Zoom room? It looked like half of it came alive.
Totally.
So
And I
now
love
look at,
I
here's
love
the
what you
deal. The two styles are not one's any better than the other.
of course.
That's the key.
Of course. With Aboutly, and I wonder too with some of these other systems, but they can take a particular brain type or an assessment and look at one assessment and another brain assessment and be like, oh, this person's brain is going to think this person's brain is narcissist. Like, it's that how we relate with each other based upon how our own makeups. And if we're, again, unaware of the differences or unaware, I'll say what's most interesting to me about these typologies is that it gives us insight into who we are to be able to communicate that self with another human being and to give conversation standpoints. I remember when I first discovered the human design system, they say, try it out. I'm going to give you the information, try it out, see how it works for you. And they even suggest 7 years. I've learned the system now over a decade ago, and I can say that each year it got more interesting and more interesting as I began to process life experiences, now having had the information to assess. Now, I want to jump back to two things. I want to make sure, if you're listening, momentarily, I'm going to ask Larry to tell us where you can pull your chart, because I know you're craving, like you guys have been talking all about this. Where can we pull a chart, especially if you're super active? You're like, get to the chart. Let me pull my chart. So
Like right
we're
now.
going to get there, and I'm going to ask him about how to understand your charts specifically based upon what type you are in the various categories. But before we jump there, because we're talking about dating apps, and that's where a lot of people are going to date these days. And studies have also shown that one of the predictors of long-term relationships. Now, I know we all have friends. You may even be in a relationship with somebody that you met on a dating app. We all have friends who are in beautiful marriages and relationships with people they met on dating apps. However, statistically, people who are friends first tend to have longer relationship compatibility. And I think that is important if you are out there dating and you are, that you go on this journey of self-discovery, so be able to understand self and communicate that self with those who you're relating with in the workplace, in your love life as friends, and that you're seeding these relationships and connections. So often I see people who they're only relating to the opposite sex for dating purposes. Like, I'm going on a date to see if this person could be the one so I can go back into my life and we could, live happily ever after. And I want to encourage you to befriend the opposite gender and to start planting seeds, because those seeds, with this pressure that we can feel sometimes to know, is this person the one? And should I keep hanging out with them again and again? Should we schedule another date, or should I not go out with them again? I had a friend recently who was, in that assessment with a guy of whether she should keep dating him or not. And I said to my friend, would you be friends with him? Like, would you be friends with him if you weren't dating? And she thought for a moment and said, no. I was like, there's your answer. Why would you go out if the person is not even going to be your friend? And some dating coaches, which I don't know where they got this advice from, say, don't be friends with men. They tell women not to be friends with men because that can, hold them back from the real guy that they'll be in relationship with.
Oh my God, Christina, there is so much misinformation and misguidance in the dating world. And if you put, I don't know, I was wanting to throw some percentage out, but it would just be making it up. But let's just say there's a high percentage of matchmakers that have their own system and their own way of putting people together. And they find a way to get people so thoroughly involved with each other that they create marriages. I mean, there's actually a strategy for that, right? We don't have as much statistics on how long those marriages last. but they pull people together because that puts their success ratio higher. I can tell you that I've had many of my customers, our clients, we have over 3 million people have run our assessment. They'll say, do you have a recommendation for a matchmaker? And our comment is, if you have a matchmaker you really like, have them contact us. As long as they use genetic energetics as part of their profiling, then use them. And I will tell you that this is not necessarily to match people. This is to prepare the couple for understanding the person you're introducing them to, right? To prepare them and not to look for behaviors, but to understand some of the differences and how to accommodate and honor those differences. Now, what matchmaker do you know that sends you off to meet someone and goes, by the way, you two are really different in this area, and and here's what you might want to do because every place else you really match up well. I work with couples all over the world, and with what we call love restoration coaching, right? And there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of reasons why we get together with our partners. And then sometimes I work with couples who are exactly the same as each other. And I can tell you, by the way, that if you're young, if you're under 25, that being with someone who you're exactly like usually blows up on you. As cool as it feels. This is like, how many times have any of us met people that they'll say, well, oh yeah, we were boyfriend and girlfriend in high school, but it didn't last. And then we ran into each other 15 years later and realized we were always the partners that we were supposed to have in our life. And now we've been together for the last 30 years. Those stories, there's a lot of those. Because what happens at a young age, you're under 25, your brain's not even completely formed. You're still learning, you're discovering. You don't know who you are, and you're a little sensitive about not knowing who you are. And so you're not as intimate or revealing or vulnerable with your partner. But if you're in a relationship where you're genetically, energetically aligned, like exactly the same, guess what? There's no place to hide. If I ask you, let's say it's you and I, Christina, that we're the same, right? And I ask you a question and you go, I'm okay. And I know okay is not okay. I can feel it's not okay. I mean, I can sense it, like I know what my okay would be like, and I know that would be me not wanting to share something. So I know there's a withhold, right? It's obvious. You could not convince me otherwise. And I go, come on, you can tell me it's all right. And you go, no, this is just something I need to figure out on my own. Now, here's the interesting part. Yeah, it's okay for them to figure it out on their own. But when you're in a partnership with someone, not being part of that growth, of that emergent opportunity, feels like a withhold. It feels like you're not really in partnership. And when you're younger and you're looking for it, they blow up. They just don't work. And then they come back later when they're a lot wiser. They've had maybe a few relationships, maybe kids, maybe a marriage. And they go, oh yeah, I was just a kid then. I didn't really know. Now I know what I really desire. And it includes friendship at the deepest level. It includes intimacy. It includes what I call courageous intimacy. You want a great relationship? Be courageously intimate. You have to be. It means that you're vulnerable, you have integrity, you're radically honest. You are courageous in that if there's something that's going to come up, as things will always do, because we're messy humans, things come up. But when those things come up, you're courageous because you're excited to learn how you get to grow and evolve to get closer and closer with your partner. That's a quality relationship. And from that place, you have all kinds of beautiful things happen. That's when co-creation happens. Co-creation doesn't go on otherwise, but that's co-creative. It's serendipitous and it's blissful. So You want the ingredients for a long-term quality relationship? It's courageously intimate.
That is so, so true. And going on a journey of self-discovery and relational discovery with each other.
Beautiful.
We have my partner and I have a human design reading set for the end of this month. Courting you're coming to the Magic Castle with us next week. I'm like, let's go hang out with Larry, Dave. So excited for us to be able to learn about each other through this framework. Let's get into the chart itself. If you're listening, in the description of this podcast, you'll see a link for you to go ahead and take your assessment. You can pull your individual personal assessment. We can also include a link that they can do the compatibility assessment, which is a small fee of $47, correct?
Yeah. So the first thing they're going to do is you want to just do what's called a personal energetic profile. So the link that's in this, that's in the podcast here, click on that link. It's going to open a page. At the bottom of the page, it's going to say create new account. So create a new account. It goes through a high security process. We have a one-time password, an OTP that will be sent to you so that you can validate you are who you are, because the security around this information just needs to be held highly, just treasured, right? So you go through that, and now it's going to tell you have an account, log in, and the very first thing it's going to ask you to do is run a personal energetic profile. This is a profile on just you. Right. And you just need two pieces of information. Actually, you need only one, but two are nice. The one piece of information is your birth date. You guys all know that. Don't lie. Tell the truth. No one's going to see it. When the report comes out, we don't show the birth date. You don't have to worry about showing it to other people and someone finding out what your real age is if you don't want to talk about it. So we did that intentionally.
That.
What's that? Yeah, get over that really. But some people are very sensitive. So I honor that sensitivity. So we created this report without that printed on it. But there are questions to make sure you provide the right answers. So the true answers, so you don't get a report that's not you. Anyhow, put your birth date in there. And then if you can have it, you want your biological opposite gender parent's birth date. For the women on this show, that means your biological father. And for the men, it's your biological mother. If you were adopted, it's not that person. If you don't know it, and about 20% of the people, Christina, don't have that information. They don't have the parent's birth date, either for all kinds of reasons. But I can't even, there's so many of them, I can't even go into them all. But if you don't have that, don't worry about it. Run the report without it. There's just one piece that we won't get, but you'll get everything else.
What's the piece?
That's the attractions, the piece around chemistry.
Oh, true or false?
True or false attractions.
Cool.
And chemistry in itself is a show. I mean, I did a series of chemistry shows. It was 4 hours long. There's so much to talk about around chemistry. But so you won't have that piece if you don't have your biological parent's birth date, but don't worry about it. You can run the report without it and run it now. And if you don't have the parent's birth date now, you can always go back and run the report again later. The nice thing about once you have this account, you can run personal energetic profiles on anybody you want, right? So run your own first. And then if there was a relationship you were in and you want to kind of curious about what may have gone wrong or where the bumpy parts were and you just want to test it out, go back in and put their name in. Don't use your name again, and put their birth date, and it'll get emailed to you. It's not going to go to them because we're using just your email, right? So that's it. It's going to it's going to show on the site right when you run it, but it also gets emailed to you. So you'll have the report.
Can my super active brain challenge your moderate active brain?
Oh yeah, please, all day long.
Okay. So can we go through the data that they'll receive in like a laser, way? Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. So I'm going to prompt you each time.
Okay. So this is going to be interesting because, by the way, this is a 3-day seminar and we're going to compact it into like 15 minutes. So
we're going to give them just
hold on to your seat.
just a little like wet it. So they're going to become more interested.
Good. I'm totally into it, Christina. You're good.
And they're going to join the Love Club. Where we do peer-to-peer matchmaking, and we do actually use these compatibility assessments to help you better understand who the people that you're going to match with. So yeah, this is just a starting point. This is just like they pulled their report and they see category 1, they're figurative or structural.
Okay, these are called communication style. There's 4 primary lifestyle traits. We have communication, activity level, financial logic, and sexual response type. So communication style, each one has two different kinds. Communication style has the figurative person and a structural person. I am structural. I pick my words to mean exactly what I want to say. When you talk to me, I'm going to define what you're saying to me kind of based on Webster's dictionary. Okay. And there's not necessarily going to be a lot of emotion in my words. It's just because my words mean everything. If I say to you, it's important, and I say it in that word, like I just say it's important, or I love you, and I say it like that, you don't hear any emotion. You might not even hear it if you're figurative. The figurative is the other kind. So a figurative person is someone who's more emotive in their communication. Now, they could be a radio show host and they pick their words very carefully when they're doing interviews or when they're asking people questions, or they could be an engineer. They could have lots of different occupations where words are very important. But the key here is that in their natural way of communicating, they're emoting. And if they don't hear an emotion, they don't even really know that they're supposed to pay attention to it. So if you've ever had a situation where you said something to someone and they go, I didn't hear you say that, they might not have heard it. So if I'm talking to Christina and I go, this is really important information, you have to pay attention to it, she may not heard the word important. But if I go, Christina, this is so important. This is really important. You need to listen to this, right? Now she's paying attention. Mm-hmm. Now, whose responsibility is it to make sure that she gets it? If I know she's figurative and she misses some of my things, then I'm going to put more emotions into it. Because here's what happens with the figurative person. If I say something, they don't hear an emotion, they may read an emotion into it. They'll go, well, he said all these words. He's got all these words coming out of his mouth and he's talking really fast and he's saying all these things. It must be important to him. I wonder how he really feels about it. And you put a feeling in there. And guess what? That feeling could be wrong.
So I'm figurative. Mm-hmm. I was actually surprised to learn that my partner is structural. Mm-hmm. What would you like when somebody hears, because you even thought that I was structural before we ran the report.
I did. And it had a lot to do with how you do inquiry, right? So the way you ask questions, you were really specific about how you ask questions and you listened really intently. And a structural person listens for words really intently. So, just because of the way you communicate and the way you kind of do life, it seems structural. But the reality is that piece was, but when it comes to emoting, I mean, tell me, are you figurative or structural? What do you know, Christina, now that you've heard about it?
Yeah, I would be curious if you're listening, can you tell the difference of Larry being structural communication style and me, Christina, being figurative communication style?
It could be tricky. Now, this is a tricky one on a radio show. So being a radio show host myself, right, I've learned to talk both languages because I need to be able to communicate with both people, with both structural and figurative. It's really when you get into a situation that's important, when you're describing something, when there's some sensitivity to it, and that sensitivity is what's driving you, then how is that communicated? When you need to know something or you need to express something, how is that communicated? Is it communicated in a way that is clear to you, maybe clear to you, but not to the other person? Or the other person is just using a lot of words, then you're not picking up an emotion, so you're not certain what you're getting from them. Structural people build their sentences by almost like putting bricks in a wall. They'll provide a whole lot of information, sometimes a lot more than you need, but they feel that they've got to provide all this information as quickly as they can if they're super active, slower if they're moderate active, but as quickly as they can so that they've actually communicated what they're trying to say. They have huge feelings underneath the surface, but they're using words to describe a scenario and not showing those feelings the same way. And some people will say, well, that's a masculine trait versus a feminine trait. And this is important to know. None of this is gender specific. And that's the critical piece that really upsets the apple cart of a lot of people like David Data and John Gray and Alison Armstrong that have beliefs about women are and men are. Some of their things are really accurate. Some of them are, let's just say we could question them.
Okay. I think it's really interesting here too, because my significant other being a big biohacker, last week I put this new technology on my head that was assessing my brain, what areas of my brain are more active and what are more dormant. And it showed that there's the part of my brain that is focused on language actually is a little bit more dormant than other areas of my brain. So it was rather interesting to see, because although my brain is average for my age, that particular piece. So I get curious as we start to, go on the journey, as someone's going on this journey of self-discovery, and these new technologies are continuing to come to the forefront. I'm still now, because being in relationship with him and all these systems, I was telling him recently, I'm like, we're going to have to sit down and go through all these tests that I've just, that I've just compiled, and be like, what the heck does this mean? But how does then brain health also come into, how do you consider brain health if you're talking about communication styles? Maybe that's where this is.
Well, let me just throw something out here. Yeah, let me just throw something out here real quickly. So let's just assume for a second that your genetic energetics determine how your brain evolves, right? But you don't know anything about genetic energetics. You don't know anything about figurative or structural talking style. And so, but you do know something about brain science because you're a neurophysicist or whatever. You're into brain science, right? And what do you want to do? Like, look, there's enough scientists out there to want to know how our brains work and what shows up in our brain when we're talking and communicating. They could be coming up with information that is genetically determined, right? But they haven't looked at genetic energetics as a source for that information. So they're just doing brain science. And now we're going into your brain and going, well, look, there's this part about language that's not as evolved as this other part. Your figurative talking style, maybe that has something to do with it. I'm not saying that that's the answer, but I am going to tell you that a lot of the science out there is what man does. This is what, as humans, this is what we do. We want to figure shit out. We want to be able to figure out why things happen a certain way. Look at Helen Fisher, who created chemistry, right? She did research, and in the term of her research, determined that chemistry only lasts 2 years. Right? That was it. That chemistry starts, it's brain chemicals, but it only lasts a couple of years. And she did all this research and all these people, and they looked at all these things. Then here comes genetic energetics. We come along and go, excuse me, you put all this research together, but here's another variable you haven't looked at. And guess what? Science is as accurate as the information you give it. But if there's another element there that's not even considered, an element in nature maybe that you don't even know about, that may have an influence, but it's not in your study, you may come to a conclusion that is partly right, but partly wrong. What we know about chemistry now, at least from our research, and this isn't our research, it's actually a group of scientists that came in and researched us and proved that our system of being able to identify chemistry was accurate. And what it really showed is that chemistry really never goes away unless there's another neurotransmitter that's related to pain. Pain recalibrates things. So the chemistry that you're living with could plummet in a heartbeat if you break your leg, or you get in an auto accident, or you lost your dog. Something that's so painful, so emotionally painful, that this other neurotransmitter comes alive. And now the oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, PEA, vasopressin, testosterone, all of these neurotransmitters and these chemicals all of a sudden recalibrate while you're in pain. Guess what? Chemistry goes away. Now, as soon as the pain's gone, chemistry comes back.
That's so interesting because
now, so here you're in this relationship, 2 years. 2 years is about as much pain as most people can take statistically before they go, screw it, this is not working, right? And then they leave the relationship and they're upset and they don't like the person, and then they run into him 10 years later at a party and they still don't like him, and they feel chemistry and they go, ooh, I don't like this person. Why am I feeling chemistry? Same genetic factors are at play.
You're making a case for BDSM.
Perhaps.
Being the figurative, energetic type, I am now assessing, maybe that's part of this other curiosity component to my archetype. I'm assessing the word that I said, the language part of my brain is dormant. It's more of like dawed. It's not as active. And so to clarify, as I'm saying these words at times, somebody, a structural brain, could have heard me and been like, or that part of a brain's turned off. I was like, no. Actually, I'm not saying it's turned off. I'm saying maybe it's not lighting up. It's not activated as much as it could be for an average person. And so that could be a difference of maybe how a structural brain might have picked up how I was speaking versus somebody, if I was emoting, it's not as important as the words I'm saying. I'm like, oh, that's not be, you know what I mean?
So
Come on.
Here's the deal. We can geek out on this to our heart's desires, right? We can geek out, or there's another option. We can just be present for what is, flow with what is, learn how to inquire, to be curious about the difference, be in a place of discovery and the joy, the incredible joy of discovery in that moment. And it's like a good medicine trip, right? It's like, oh my God, this is so nice, right? And do we need to have an answer about why it's nice, or can we just enjoy it? Where we need our answers are when we have obstacles. Ideally, the invitation, people, is to be in our joy, to be glorious, joyful humans, right? And then when obstacles come up, be able to embrace them and not make someone wrong. Be able to embrace them and look for the difference, to inquire, to be curious about what's going on when we need to get through that obstacle. But you know what? Humans, we've got these brains and these egos, and they get bored, and we go, okay, well, why are we happy? What's love? Boy, don't take me down that path, because the reality is there is no definition for love. None. There isn't. It's a life force. You are all love all the time. All the time. You're breathing your love. You don't have to look for it. You got it. You chose life. You are love.
I have very strong thoughts on love.
I hope so.
And love equals life. It's like the journey of life is love. And it's really simple in my mind and in the experience of living it. It's the process of removing layers of the ego, your fears, the negativity, the judgment, the things that are holding you back from being your most authentic self. So the continuation of, that's why I geek out on these typologies, because it gives me more deeper access to my own being. And I can continue to shed all of the stuff that's not mine, that was conditioned, so I can be just more and more and more purely me, coupled with ever increasing acts of sharing.
Yeah,
because we give to who we love.
Wouldn't it be nice if I had a magic wand and I could just wave it over your head and go, oh, the psychosis is gone. It's gone. It's just gone, right?
Well, then I'd be dead. I would just die. It'd be over.
You can still be very curious. Hopefully you will always be very curious. Okay, we just did, I went at high speed and did did the communication styles. We didn't even do all the things about communication styles. By the way that you look at situations, how you look at how the sense of humor, but here's a big one, and this is really important one, the two communication styles. Anybody listening, you've probably at one time in your life used the word or called someone an energy vampire. Right? There is no such thing. I'll just tell you right now, technically, there is no such thing as an energy vampire. What it is two energetic frequencies that are bombarding each other, and they wear each other down. If you've ever played with magnets and you try and push them together and they're pushing themselves apart, that's what two different communication styles will do. They repel each other energetically. Now, if you're in a relationship with someone who's a different communication style, it doesn't mean that you can't be with them, but it does mean that you've got to make sure that your resources are really strong if you're going to spend a lot of time with them, which means spend some time without them. Spending 24/7 with them is probably not a good idea. Spend time with your girlfriend or your guy friends or whatever, those people that you're close to, because those are likely going to be more of your communication style that'll bring your energy back right away. There is no such thing as an energy vampire. Never has been. Ever.
I also think, if you haven't married the person, or you're not tied together through procreation, having children, relationships are a free will experience. So often, that energy vampire thing shows up, that they're labeling someone else. And I'm like, move on. Like, if you're not growing in this connection, you don't have to be there. Like, you can go elsewhere. I get it that a lot of people are in survival mode at times, and they think they need somebody else. They think that this is the only way, but there's lots.
So that is a possible answer for sure. And the other side, there's always different sides, right? But the other side is you really love the person, you really care for them, and you want to be with them, but they're draining your energy. Now, if you're going to be in this relationship for whatever reasons that are most important to you, know that you have to create separation so that you can recharge your battery. So when you come back together, you're resourceful. Just make it a complete decision, right? Don't leave because they're draining you of energy. Leave because the relationship does not hold enough strength and value to keep you there, right?
Fair enough.
And then have your options. Okay, so that's communication style. The next one's activity level, and there's two different kinds. One's moderate active, one's super active. Moderate active is me when I'm talking like this. I'm very methodical. I don't answer questions too quickly. I really listen to people. When I'm on task, I can go like a bat out of hell, but when I'm not, I can just chill and relax and not know what I'm going to do next. Super active person, they talk fast like this. Everything they know, they can usually get out very quickly, but the one thing that they do really well is they listen to things, and the thing that they have to stop themselves from doing is finishing other people's sentences. And every super active person knows this. They go, I know what he was going to say before they're done. I know what they're going to say before they're done. Look at, you just said it. But you're just being nice to us to let us finish our sentences because sometimes we surprise you. Okay. But the most important thing about a super active person is from the time your head leaves the pillow in the morning until it goes back on the pillow at night, you like to have a plan. You like to have structure. And if you don't have that structure, your body feels dysregulated. It doesn't feel like it's in a flow state, and it feels awkward, and it even is the source for depression, right? It just feels so wrong, so off. Now, this doesn't mean that you go and never stop, because what is structured may be an hour of walking on the beach, or an hour of meditation, or a trip out into the forest, or it could be a variety of things that you do. Or I'm going to a movie tonight, or we're going to do dinner. So it's not like you just are someone that can't ever stop, but you have a plan. You have a plan in your day, and it's important to you. So if you're super active, when you look at this chart and you've got your day going on that's like haphazardly, and you don't have things together, and you feel really uncomfortable, it's because you need to plan your day out. And I can spend hours talking about what we do to help people. During COVID, this was the hardest thing for super active people. They were the ones that got depressed the quickest, because basically COVID came in and said, just stop. Put on a mask and stop. Don't go out. Stop, right? And it's like, that's it. You can't tell a super active person to stop. That's like telling them to die. You just can't do it. But COVID tried to do that, and it was really hard on super active people. So moderate active person is slightly different.
So Dave and I are both super active. Now,
perfect. Great.
In working with people, though, who are seeking partnership, I think for me, I'm curious if I may have been repellent towards moderate active people, because I perceive them as not being able to keep up.
Yeah,
I felt like when I was dating, that there was a lot of people I was looking for, like, who can keep up with me? Like, who can I spar in conversation or have great banter with when I'm engaging? And I'm curious if a super active person might have that experience when they're out dating.
Well, so figurative and super active and structural and super active are a little bit different. Okay. And figurative super active with mental, emotional, sexual response type versus physical sexual response type are different again. So there are various different speeds that show up around it. Some are more engaging, some are not. I have dated and been in a relationship with super active people for decades, and I love it. I love it. It keeps me on my toes. I go out walking, and I'm not walking, I'm jogging. It's like, great, this is good. This is high energy. It helps me make decisions quicker, it gets me thinking faster, right? Sometimes too fast. and I just have to, to deal with that. But it's just, again, it's accommodating for the difference in understanding it. It's just understanding it. And what happens is, like, people will look at if you're moderate active, people will look at a moderate active person, will look at a super active person and say, you need to chill, just relax. Like, let's say you, me, and David are sitting on the beach in Waikiki, and we're drinking Mai Tais, right? So all three of us are together, and I'm like halfway through mine, and next thing I know, the two of you are standing up, and you're done with yours. And they're going, Larry, what do you want to do next? And I'm like, I look at you guys and go, well, I'm not even halfway through my Mai Tai, and you guys look at each other and go, so what do we do? Do we go out on the sailboat? Should we go shopping? Should we go up on the mountains? What do you want to do? Or should we get another drink? And I'm looking at you guys going, whoa, you guys, like, it's holiday time. Just chill, relax. That's the wrong thing, because what I really need to say to you is, like, go for it. You guys figure out what you want to do. I'm just going to sit here and drink my drink and relax for a while, and I'll catch up with you later. Let's just catch up here. But the one makes you wrong and tells you, like, you can't chill. And the other one embraces it and says, yeah, go for it. Whatever you guys are excited about doing, go do it. Like, you're on the same page, and I'm fine right here sitting on the lounge chair watching all the whatever I'm watching, right? So one creates distance because of separation and diversity, and finding the diversity and making someone wrong. The other accepts the difference and embraces it. That's it. That's what we need to do as human beings. We come up with narratives and we go, oh, your narrative is different than mine. I don't like you. I'm never going to like you. You're a bad person, right? Bullshit.
But not to dive into this, but Dave and I would be thinking, we're still drinking alcohol? Who still drinks alcohol? We're done drinking alcohol. Come on.
Okay.
Humanity.
So
let's get past that one.
An example. Okay. So
I'll grab a kava.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, so let's go into now.
We'll go to the next one.
Logic.
We'll go to the next one real quick, because otherwise we won't be done until midnight. So the next one is financial logic. And there's two kinds. There's conservative financial logic. There's non-conservative financial logic. The conservative financial logic person is got like a spreadsheet in their head. They count things. They're aware of things. They know how much money they have and they don't have. They're good with books. They can, do all kinds of things financially, and it's easy for them. The non-conservative financial logic person, they may be able to do that, especially if they went to school to be trained to do that, but it's not what they like to do. So, Christina, are you conservative or non-conservative?
I'm non-conservative. I know you're conservative, and Dave is conservative.
And David's conservative. Okay, so here's a situation. If you guys are in a relationship with each other, I would say, who's doing the books? I know who's going to do the books. It's David, because it's easy for him. Right now, if you were both non-conservative and I say, who's doing the books? And I've asked clients this, one will turn around and go, well, I do it 1 month and she does it the next month. And I go, stop that. Just hire a bookkeeper. Neither of you guys like doing it. Hire a bookkeeper. The extra time you get with each other is going to be worth way more than what the bookkeeper costs you. Let them do the books for you and tell you what's there and what's not there. Right. So, I have a partner who's non-conservative financial logic, and she's like, it's the end of the year and she's thinking about taxes, and it's going, what's wrong? What's up? She says, I hate doing my taxes. And I said, let me do it. She goes, are you crazy? Why would you want to do that? I said, because I can. It's easy. And she's going, that's insane. It seems like the cruelest thing I could ask someone to do. And I went, no, just give me the information. I'll do it. 3 hours, I had it done. And she goes, how is that possible? Right. It just was easy for me. But here's the deal. When it comes to making money and manifesting money, the non-conservative financial logic people, we call them rainmakers, because it just shows up. Like, Christina, have you ever really worried about money?
Oh, I have. Because being an entrepreneur and risking it all, and when I say risking it all, of just when I got to the place in my late 20s, early 30s, of making $100K salary, I walked away from it to be an entrepreneur. And I did that. I remember getting scolded by people around me at times because I'd go ask for advice of what to do. And I'd feel like, oh my God, how am I going to pay my rent? Like at one point I was $40,000 in debt, but I was $40,000 in debt. And that same year I'd raised $40,000 for children of abuse, extreme poverty, and human trafficking. Friends would look at me and be like, why do you keep doing this event? You're not working for the whole month. You're giving it to the orphans. Why not take care of yourself? And I was living like an orphan at the time.
You know why you didn't take care of yourself? Because you knew you were going to be okay.
I did. That's the thing.
That's the thing. This is the piece
knew
when
I was going to be okay.
There you go.
Even though I'd stress the fuck out sometimes, I knew I was going to be okay.
There's the difference. The conservative financial logic person is convinced they're not going to be okay if money's that tight. Like there's a different kind of fear. And because you knew you were going to be okay, guess what happened? You were able, like a rainmaker, to bring in money that you could give to orphanages, that you could give to other people. Money showed up for you. It just showed up for you. So the conservative financial logic, because we're counting all the time, by the way, I'm conservative financial logic because we're counting all the time, we can get in the way of the abundance that money brings. So we have to have a different relationship with it. And the relationship with it, or earning, has to be about contribution. It's like, what are we doing? What are we giving? As a coach, I could go, wow, well, they just paid me $1,000. That'll help pay my bills. And think of my client like that. Or as a coach, I can go, we just spent 2 hours together and they left. And I know that the relationship with their kids and the relationship at work and the people that they're close to is going to be enhanced as a result of what we did today. And I'm so grateful and honored to be part of that. Right. And when I come at it like that, guess what? I get lots of clients. But if I'm counting money, I might as well lock the doors. So there's more around financial logic. We don't have time for it. We'll go to the next one, which is sexual response type, which is the biggest reset on this planet.
I found this one super fascinating.
There's two different kinds of sexual response type. There's mental emotional sexual response type, and there's physical. The mental emotional person, the prelude to sex to them is really important. In fact, it's critically important. So just romance, connection, the sense of love and desire, just like it's in their head and their heart. And it starts there before they really get deeply into wanting to be intimate, especially sexually intimate. Now, it doesn't mean they can't have a quickie every once in a while. They can, but it will never sustain them. Okay. So that prelude to sex is critically important. Now, most people, if you're talking to some of the experts out there, will say, well, that's a typical female behavior. That's all women. It's not all women. It's half of the women on this planet, and it's half of the men on this planet. So if you're a woman thinking that guys just think with their cock, you're wrong. You're totally wrong. Now, John Gray will have some, he and I have had some conversations. He may think differently about this because he's looking at hormones and what hormones are doing. But at a genetic level, there's something else going on, and that affects the hormones. And what's happening here, though, is that the mental and emotional person, their sexual energy is on the surface. It's available to them all the time, and people can feel the sexual energy. So there are men and women on this show listening right now that since they were little kids have been misunderstood. They've been curious, like a young girl is curious about some guy. She's asking him questions, and he thinks she's flirting with him. But she's not. She's just curious. She doesn't want to take him to bed. She doesn't want to be a girlfriend. She doesn't want to do anything. She's just curious who the person is. And that curiosity combined with the sexual energy that is flowing on the surface has the other person think that they're flirting with them. And they're wrong most of the time. And so little girls grow up being told, you stop being such a floozy. Stop being so, so forward. Stop that. You need to, curb it, girlfriend. And guys, like, I'm mental emotional. Here I ask a girl a question and I may be like interested. I'm going, wow, she's really cool. I haven't decided if I want her as a partner or not. I just want to know who she is. But guess what I get almost immediately? The friend zone, right? Because that's the safety point. They go, oh, I put them in the friend zone. I don't have to worry about the sexual energy I'm feeling. And they're not saying sexual energy, but they're feeling it. Okay. So it can be really awkward for guys, and it's very uncomfortable for girls. And you find mental emotional women. If you put 100 women in a room, I can tell you who's mental emotional and who's physical, because the mental emotional women will dress down. They'll try not to look sexy. Right. because they don't want to be misunderstood, because they get misunderstood all the time. But the prelude to sex is their orientation, right? It has to come from their head and their heart. Now, there's the physical sexual response type person, and the experts out there will tell you this is all the men, right? And here's the deal. If I ask a physical sexual response type person, I went, so all those things I described, like flowers and candles and music and all that stuff, do you need that to get turned on? And
well, it's so
the answer I get, and
this
happened with you too, Christina. You had a pause.
I had a pause because my erotic blueprint, my primary, when I took it a year ago, was sensual. So
which is perfect for a physical person, but it doesn't mean so. Sensual is the body contact piece, right? So here's the thing: the physical sexual response type person, when they're hot, they're hot. When they want you, they want you. And if you're looking at Christina right now, I'm looking at her and she's shaking her head. You don't see it. She's going, that's true. That's true. That with the mental emotional person, that's not the case. So the physical person is like, when I'm ready, I'm ready. A perfect example I can give you is that years ago, I had a relationship, wonderful. I love this woman. She's such a good friend, but she's physical sexual response type. And so we have this relationship with each other. She's a doctor. She's at work. She's coming back at 6 o'clock. I go, great. Okay, I'm going to start a fire. I'm going to go get some flowers. I'm going to make some flower arrangements. I'm going to put on her favorite music, and I have dinner ready, and I'm going to light candles at the table. So I'm doing all that. Guess what? I'm doing all my own foreplay. I'm taking care of myself. I'm good because I'm so into it, right? She comes to the door and I go, are you hungry? And she goes, oh, I'm hungry. She didn't want food. She wanted me, right? So at that moment, I could have got, because it's so sweet what I've done, right? She could have turned around and go, but we can eat. We can eat. Look what all you did. But me being smarter, actually being aware, I don't even say it's smarter, but being aware of our difference, immediately went, oh yeah, okay, let's go play. The food will be better. It'll be leftovers. It'll be great. The candles will be half burnt down. They'll look really exotic and, it'll be even better, right? So we did. We went and played and we came out and ate. Now, if she went along and went, it's so sweet, let's have dinner. Consciously, she's justifying this. But other than conscious level, her body's going, he didn't get my clue. He missed it, right? So, and I wouldn't have. Now, I could do that once. I could get away with it. I could do it twice, maybe get away with it twice. By the third time, the body is knowing, why should I get excited? Because he doesn't pick up on it. So I'm just going to wait for some other cue. But the other cue doesn't come. And so oftentimes when you have the two different sexual response types, one of the things I hear from mental emotional people is they look at their partner and say, I don't know what to do. They just lay there on the bed. I don't know how to get them excited. This is after a certain period of time because the body is shut down because the cue has been missed so many times. So how do we deal with this difference? It's not just picking up on the cue, but there's something else going on as well. The mental emotional person, their sexual energy is all on the surface. It's moving. It's like Kundalini energy. It's available to them all the time. In fact, if they're not having sex, they have plenty of extra energy and they can talk faster like I'm talking right now, and it's not so difficult, right? But the physical sexual response type person, their sexual energy is held inside, and you know what they're waiting for? They're waiting for the person that has the key to their lock, that can open the door and let the sexual energy flow. And what that looks like is often, if you've ever played with tuning forks, if you have a tuning fork in the key of C, you wrap it on a table and it starts to vibrate in the key of C. It's beautiful. If there's another tuning fork in the room, it could even be 30 feet away and it's just sitting on the table. Guess what it'll do? If it's in the key of C, it will vibrate. No one touched it, but it'll vibrate, because it's picking up the frequency from the one that was wrapped, right? If it's in a different key, it just sits there as a piece of metal. And so what's happening here is when the two sexual response types, two physical sexual response type people are together, they have the key to each other's lock. That vibration starts. And it's really easy to engage. It's super easy to engage. Now, there's possibility for all kinds of issues because none of us are trained very well around sexuality, right? So there could be all kinds of sexual conditions that come up. And this is where the erotic blueprints are super valuable, because it helps people understand what they like, what their preferences are, and creates great conversations. I'm a big fan of them. right? But you got to look at both the energetic piece and the blueprint together. And, I know the couple that put that thing together, they're brilliant. And guess what drove it? Different sexual response types. They had to come up with the answers to that to keep the relationship together. And they came up with a beautiful piece of work that is so valuable to this world. Again, doesn't stand alone, just like genetic energetics does not stand alone.
It's interesting. I'll get a little personal here. So Dave and I have the same. We're both physical sexual response. This past weekend, we went to a training, Kimmy Inch, who we promote through the We Deepen Network. She's a kink educator, and she facilitates a 4-day erotic wellness program called Something More. And this weekend, we went to support her at the party where everyone gathers to explore their sexuality. Some can call this a play party. I've hosted many episodes with the play party facilitators and Kimmy Inch as well. Well, we went together to this party, and midway through it, I got super sensitive. Now, as you said, it's not so easy to determine, is this an energetic thing coming through being a physical energetic or having a physical energetic profile? However, as we're discussing this, I think that might have been what was going on for me, because we went into this play space and so quickly we were dropped into the physical, but my physical body wasn't activated. And I have memories from previous relationships. I felt, as you were saying, like the body remembers these scenarios. So I can remember being in previous relationships where I was ready to go. And I would almost though want them to intuit it or feel as though like I've put their hand somewhere, I've opened up, and then they didn't get the cue or pick up the cue. This is granted previous relationships where I wasn't as skilled as I am now in relating. And so when we're in this experience with the social experience with other people around, and a lot of sexual energy is, circulating the space, I couldn't find my grounding in there because my pleasure wasn't being, I wasn't being focused. It wasn't, and even to be more descriptive, like I wasn't activated. Like nobody just grounded me. It probably would have been better going to that experience if him and I, had our own sexual connection first, and then walked into a space, and then maybe went home that night and had dropped back into our own sexual connection. But it was really confusing to me in that moment, because midway through, and it was also an edge for me midway through, like I could feel the tears, coming out of my eyes, and you're kind of doing this thing where you're wiping them and you're like, oh, I don't want to see the other person to see that I'm upset. And that would be, somebody might in the past, like years ago, ask me, are you okay? And I'd be like, I'm fine, everything's fine. And that time,
those things can come up for sure.
And I was courageous, and I was like, hey, I'm feeling really sensitive. And he pretty much dropped everything, and we grounded, and we ended up leaving a little bit early, but it was perfect. It opened up deep discussions that night, deep discussions the next morning. We got closer through the experience. But I feel as though it was coming from the physical aspect of me not being grounded in, and grateful that we both have the same, he's physical as well.
It's a big piece. It's a big piece. And people will always ask, well, what do we do if we're different? Right. And if you're different, it starts with understanding the difference for sure. But what it requires, because the mental emotional person, their sexual energy is already moving. They're good. They don't need it released. It's already out. The physical person, their sexual energy, it's like their Kundalini energy can't move unless they get someone that has the key to that lock. So what do the two do? Well, they need to exchange energy. There are energy techniques, energy movement techniques, but ultimately they have to, what Reid Mihalko calls, find a note, right? They need to get that note so that they circulate it together so the energy moves. This is a technique. It's not one that you just snap your fingers and go, here's my note. It's not like that. So there are many things that you can do. Eye gazing is important. Breathing with each other is important. Being able to just touch. There's a thing called solar touch. There's a variety of different kind of tantric techniques that are very effective at helping cross the barrier. But ultimately, you have to be vibrating at the same note. And that's a piece that there's not a lot of people that teach it. I know 3. I've been looking for the answer to this for 15 years and just discovered this particular piece to it. I've been teaching certain parts, but this particular piece a couple of years ago. And there's not a lot of people teaching it yet. Hopefully there'll be a lot more. But it's an important piece. There is another thing that everyone should know. If you're physical sexual response type, this is a sweet thing and it's really delicious, is that the prelude to sex is important for a mental emotional person. The aftermath is important for the physical. So if you make love to your partner, whether you orgasm or not, but whatever you do and you have this experience, and when you're done, the mental emotional person can easily climb out of bed, answer their phone, go to the bathroom, run down the street to get some food, do whatever they want to do because it seems like it's over. Because remember, the prelude was important to them. But the physical person is in bed going, where the fuck did he go or she go, right? And there's a cool down period. There's this piece where it's really delicious and just it's nurturing in the most important way for you to stay together. When you're with a physical sexual response type person, do not go, if you climb out of bed, get your ass back in there. Let them tell you when they're done. Let them tell you, okay, this has been great. I'm complete now. Because they're not complete just because they had an orgasm and that, and he came or whatever the case might be, or she came, whatever that case might be, that doesn't mean they're done. And any physical person that's given themselves the time to really just sit there and come down, to slowly come down with their partner being held by them, embraced by them, they know how really critically important this is. So
it's so also interesting too to reflect back on the situation that I just described of being a physical. My brain knew, like, as we entered into this space, he was like, I'm yours, I'm with you. He was pretty much by my side the entire time. Beautiful. And he even had, a piece of clothing on that said, property of me and on my leash. But my brain, so that's what the confusing thing, because my brain was like, it makes sense that you're with me. Like I get you're with me, but my body couldn't feel that you were with me. And being a physical, it makes sense that my body couldn't register it. Although the mind, the emotion, all
our minds do all kinds of wonderful things to us. They really do. I mean, there's a lot erotic blueprints. Do you think that was created from the body or the mind? Could be both, right? It's probably a little of both. But, you can't exclude one for the other. So our minds, we're messy humans, that our minds do all kinds of crazy things. So there is, we've just gone through the lifestyle traits. Chemistry is another big piece here. That's a longer conversation. And then there are 6 what we call modifiers. So when you get your report, you're going to have a modifier in there. And that modifier is also genetically ID'd. So the modifiers are, there's an enroller, achiever, a perfectionist, a protector, an engager, and an emulator. And there's very different definitions for all of them. They all have an upside and they all have a downside. They have these beautiful attributes, and then they have these things that like get us stuck. And being able to be aware of those things is really, really important, especially if you want to embrace the differences in your partner and understand their behaviors. Someone who has, by the way, everybody has one modifier at least. Some people have multiple. The most anybody has ever had is 4. And I can tell you, if someone has 4 modifiers, it's a really complex person. It's like 4 personalities all trying to dance with each other. And this is the person that also often gets, someone will say, well, you have multiple personality disorder. It's not a disorder. It is definitely multiple personalities, but they're all beautiful. They just need to learn how to work with each other. Sometimes it's difficult depending on the circumstances. Sometimes it's difficult when a partner doesn't understand them because they see these different characteristics and they don't know what to hold on to. And so realizing that there's a lot of different things that are going on there makes a huge difference in relationships. It's huge with kids and it's monumental in business. When we go into business and we bring these modifiers out, we correct problems that no one even knew existed. And people that were ready to quit, I can't tell you how many times we've had someone say, you know what? I'm so glad I met you because I've already written up my notice saying I'm going to quit. And I was just holding on to see what's going on here. And I decided not to because of this. They get information that is so valuable to them that they get to stay and work better, not necessarily, better, harder, more efficiently, with more joy in the position that they're in. Sick leave changes, all those things. It's huge for business. It's huge for education. It's huge for relationships. This is all super valuable stuff. And then, and I know we're like probably at about the end of our time. We're way past the end of our time. And I got another appointment coming up, so I have to go. I'm sorry. But the piece here, again, I can't overemphasize that all of this information is massively profound. Use it to help you understand each other. Use it to help you get out of your stories. If you got shame, blame, guilt, resentment going on, you got to bust those bastards. You got to bust them and put them away, because if any of those things are happening, love is nowhere around, right? You're not present. You're either in the past or you're projecting on the future. And there's only one place for us to really connect and deeply connect that makes a difference. And that's in the present. So whatever you can use to get yourself out of your stories, whether it's genetic energetics or human design or Aboutly or gene keys, or it doesn't matter. Use it and get yourself present.
Thank you so much, Larry, for this conversation. I do, why it can get us out of our shame and guilt. It can also support us in being unoffendable. Noticing that people around us, they're always doing the best that they can, and they're uniquely different from us, and how somebody is interpreting a piece of information and presenting it to you. Like, it's just how they're processing reality in life. And when you could be shaming them for it, or someone could be projecting onto you, but transmute that experience and don't take it personally.
No, that's the key. Look at lots of people. We're all different. We all have our unique characteristics and attributes, and we can't expect ourselves or anybody else everybody to love us, or to love everybody else, or to want to play with everybody else. We stop bullying in schools because we go in there and we teach them that you guys are energetically different. You don't need to be friends with everybody. It's just not natural. But just understand that you're not friends with them, not because they're a bad person. It's just because they're different and it doesn't jive with the way you want to be. We can be discerning. We can decide who we want to spend time with. But it's not because they're a bad person. It's not because they're an energy vampire. It's not because they're a narcissist. It's not because they're ADD or ADHD. It's just a difference. And so we honor ourselves and we honor other people, and then we're discerment and curiosity. You put those two together, humanity takes a huge step upward, huge step in consciousness and vibration. And that's what we need. We need to get there, because otherwise we'll just destroy this planet and each other. And that's not bueno.
No bueno. No
bueno.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Deepen with Christina. Go ahead and pull your charts. The link is in the description of this podcast. I would love to see your results. If you actually pull it and you want to share your chart in your stories on social media, go ahead and tag me at Christina Weber. Maybe if they want to tag you, do you have what are you on Instagram?
Oh, on Instagram, Love Shepherd.
Love Shepherd. Oh, the Love Shepherd. Love the Love Shepherd. Yeah, tag us. Let us know that you pulled the profile and you got something from this episode. And do check out the Love Club at We Deepen. If you're currently single, come out and join us. We also have a bunch of WhatsApp groups for people who are journeying through the relational experiences, who want healthy relationships. Come and join us. Be a part of the network. I love you all. Until next time, enjoy.